All right, welcome to Snowey's Guide to the Age of Empires 2 Civ Design Debate. There has been a lot of rumblings in the community over, I'm going to say, the last 6 months or so about Civ design. People are not happy with Civ design, the direction that the developers are pushing Civ design, all stemming from the last DLC, the Three Kingdoms, and the introduction of those civilizations. People have not been happy with the way the game has been developing and the way civilizations are designed. And this debate is reigniting all over again right now. People are a bit nervous, a bit tentative, cautiously pessimistic, if that's a thing, about the South American DLC, which will introduce 3 more civilizations. People are worried that those new civilizations from South America will be in the same direction as the Three Kingdoms civilizations, and they're not happy about it. They would be very unhappy if that was the case. So what I'm here for is to go over all the arguments, all the debates about Civ design that are active in the Age of Empires 2 community right now, investigate if they're valid arguments or if they're, quite frankly, bullshit. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But the biggest debate right now is that there's too many civilizations. Too many. We've got, what is it, 53 civilizations? Madness. How can we possibly have 53 civilizations? With the introduction of 5 in the Three Kingdoms DLC, there's just too many civilization interactions to keep track of. You know, as a player, as a viewer, how am I supposed to know what the matchup is between the Jurchens and the Mayans? Those are niche picks, maybe, or I guess they're not necessarily niche picks, but you're much less likely to have certain kind of matchups, and people don't know how to play those matchups, how to think about those matchups when they're watching Age of Empires 2. And this is being put forward as an argument. You know, people are yearning for the simpler time where they could watch Franks versus Spanish for the 1 millionth time in their life. Or so it would seem. At the same time, people will argue that some very niche civilizations are not in the game. The biggest one of these is the Tanguts. I think you pronounce it. It's well, Wikipedia says it's a Sino-Tibetan civilization. The amount of professional players and casters who saw the Three Kingdoms civilization come out and say, where are the Tanguts? Where are these Tanguts? We were expected Tanguts. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. I've never heard of the Tanguts before in my life, and I've got a Bachelor of History as one of my degrees. And granted, it's not in Chinese history or Asian history. It's more in the realm of European history. But I thought this was crazy. The amount of attention that the Tanguts were getting. Where did that come? It's so out of left field. Yeah, but the point is that people will have their hang-ups on the civilizations they want to see. If they don't see it, they're going to get mad. And this will always continue. I mean, Polynesians aren't in the game yet. People love to always talk about Polynesians in any kind of game that they usually are pushed towards the end. North American civilizations before European expansion to North America would be the next one, probably after South America, that people would be asking for. And then people are always asking for splitting up generic civs like the Slavs, these broad cultural groups, that they should be split up further. And you know, my boy Rob, I think it's is it Robbie Lava? He always does these civilization breaking up videos. How many can we make by breaking up the Slavs, for instance? You know, people will, you know, simultaneously say that there's too many civs, and yet they will also argue that there's not their niche civ in the game. And I find this argument all very trivial, to be honest, that there are too many civilizations in the game. If you remember when the definitive edition was released, and before that, what kind of civilizations were we working with? We had Europe basically well represented, we had Africa well represented, and we had 3 American Civs represented, and we had a couple of Asian civilizations represented. We had Indians. We had an Indians civilization, believe it or not, representing all of India. That's crazy. I mean, it's ridiculous. So for people to say that there's too many civilizations, what, do you want to go back to the old times of Indians and how ridiculous that is? I think not. I think this is ridiculous. I think it's very logical to add some of these civs into the game. That's not necessarily a design debate, but it is a concern amongst the community in terms of bringing in more civilizations. Yeah. Another debate though. New civilizations are overpowered or underpowered on release. Okay, this is a big one. As we all know, Georgians were crazy overpowered when they were first released. Bengalis were terrible, had a really low win rate, couldn't find their place for a while. And guess what? Georgians have come down to earth. Bengalis have found their place, somewhat, at least on arena kind of maps, and are very good. And actually, even with a fast castle, the old Phosphoru Bengali strategy. Might love it, might hate it, but they have found some kind of place in the game. And a lot of people are saying, you know, is this by design? Especially the overpowered civs. Is it by design that we have overpowered civs introduced to the game? Does it sell more product? Possibly. You know, I'm not going to rule that out. But I will say that it happens in every single game. You know, I often refer back to Dota 2 when a Dota 2 hero is introduced into the game. They're usually very good. And that's because they want people to try out the hero. And Dota is a free game. But, you know, the theory still applies. They want people to try the hero. The Age of Empires developers want people to buy the DLC and play the new DLC civilizations. I think that's probably by design. But we do have a couple of stinkers in there as well, you know, again, Bengalis, so that doesn't track with to that. Another thing is, you know, everybody loves to jump to conclusion about what's good, what's bad. You know, people have to kind of come to these conclusions within the first 10 minutes of the release. Everybody was saying that the Shu, when they were released, were terrible. That was the worst Civ that they'd ever seen in their lives. Granted, it did have a few bugs that made it not as good as it could have been. But turns out it was actually the best Civ in the game. So, you know, whoopsie. Got that one wrong. Khitans, another good example. They were certainly overpowered when they were released, and you could argue that they still are. I think that is very reasonable, but I think players are figuring out the weakness of Khitans, especially as they're trying to get their pastures going. Very expensive to build. And you've kind of got a window there in the early mid-game to kind of threaten the Khitans while they're trying to establish their economy. Still very good, mind you. But the point is, win rates settle over time, successive patches come out as well, and players respond. Civilizations typically find their place. And I think this complaint broadly comes down to impatience by the community. They're looking for a perfect implementation as soon as it's released. It's just not realistic. I mean, come on. It's just not realistic. And it doesn't happen in any other game. Why should it happen in Age of Empires 2? Patches come out, things are balanced, and you go from there. But yeah, third debate going on about civilization release and design is power creep. Okay, so that's a very similar kind of thing, but old civilizations, they kind of get pushed down while the new ones get pushed up. So yeah, I don't like this argument either. I'm going to be frank. Talking about Frank, is anybody sad that the Franks have kind of come down to earth? Do you want to see Aztecs every game? Are we sad that these civilizations are no longer at the top? Personally, no. I am not sad that those civilizations have come down to earth, especially the Franks. They were a very overpowered civilization, very one-dimensional. And I think, if anything, these civilizations have become less gimmicky, more well-rounded over time, reducing their unbearable strength, and had other parts of their kit improved to compensate. We have had Franks become not such a, they're still a very dominant Cav Civ, obviously, but not as dominant as other Civs have come into the fore. And other parts of their kit have been improved. I'm looking at throwing axemen in particular. So even though they're not that S-tier civilization anymore, they might be a B-tier, and the rest of the kit is well-rounded. I mean, I couldn't ask for a better outcome, if I'm being honest. And, those powerful Cav Civs, like the Jurchens or the Khitans, or the Wei is another one as well, they will get patched down. That will be dealt with. The power creep always progressively gets dealt with. And yeah, Civ power levels work in cycles. I mean, those civilizations are not always going to be at the top. They're going to be at the top for a while, they get nerfed, they'll be in the middle or the bottom, and then they'll work their way up again. It's just the way that game development works. I mean, I think it's a bit of old man nostalgia there that used to dominate with Franks and can no longer. Do want to give a shout out to my boy, Ornlu the Wolf. Actually, I don't have any personal affiliation on friendship with Ornlu, but I do like to watch his videos. And he has a Civ design series out right now, which I highly encourage you to look at. And he does have a tier in his design list about the Powercreep Civs. It's very real. It's a very real thing. I just don't necessarily think it is an argument against how civilizations are being designed right now. It's just part of game development that some Civs are going to get power crept and they will come back into life at a later date. Yes. Another big one. This is a huge debate right now about unique units. So typically in Age of Empires, you have your unique unit that you build at a castle. You might have a regional unit like a camel or an elephant archer if you are in India / Southeast Asia or something like that. Although, no, those ones don't have it. It's only Indian Civs that have the elephant archer. Or you've got the eagle warrior as a regional unit. But more and more, we're seeing civilizations get their own unique units that are not produced at a castle that only they get. So kind of like a unique unit. And yeah, the argument against this is that standard units are played less. And unique units are played more. So if we're looking at the Zhan swordsman from the Wu, we're looking at the Zhanbei rider. Are we looking at the warrior priest for the Armenians? All of these kind of unique units that can be produced at a barracks or an archery range or a monastery. I think there's quite a few more examples. Incas with their slinger would be another one as well. And the argument against putting these kind of units in the game is that standard units get played a lot more. So why would you build a long sword or like upgrade into the long sword line if you can just play Jian swordsman, for instance, and skip the upgrades altogether? You know, that's one of the main arguments, and people are not happy about that. Especially from a viewer perspective, because they think that viewers cannot keep track of all of these unique units, or as a player, you think it might be unfair that somebody could get a very strong unit without upgrading it. All of those kind of arguments. And my argument is that I think the trade-offs go underappreciated. You know, these civilizations have to be balanced with their unique units and the strengths of their unique units taken into consideration. And usually that's what you see. The Jian swordsman, it's not that strong later into the game. That's part of the balancing. So you might have to go into champion later and do that upgrade line later. So I don't see it necessarily to be too much of an issue as long as the rest of the civilization is balanced. Yeah. And some units are just reskins. I mean, the Jianbei Rider, obviously it's different to the Cav Archer in some degree, but it is a Cav Archer. It's just a different Cav Archer. So is it really that different of a unit, even though it's a unique unit? I don't think so, and I think we'll be taking the AoE2 community as mugs if they cannot follow very simple reskins. I think that's a great disservice to the community and their intelligence. Another one I want to mention actually is the Savar. I mean, nobody's got a problem with the Savar for the Persians. It is a reskin of a knight with some different stats. Everybody seems to be fine with it. No issue there. So why would it be any different to the Jian swordsman or the Jianbei rider? I think it's fine. But this has been a huge debate actually, and I think people just need a bit of a wake-up call. I mean, what is the point of having more civilizations if they're all going to be basically the same? You know, having points of difference between civilizations is good. Having diversity is good. I don't get it. I really don't get it. And, you know, there is the factor that the developer studio needs to make money by selling something new. And I just think it's incredibly naive of the community if they think that the developer would get the same amount of money if they made it a boring, generic civilization. I mean, can you imagine if the developer released the Saracens right now, right? Like, let's say the Saracens didn't exist, and they just released the Saracens, in my opinion, the most boring civ in the entire game. Do you think they'll get much money for that? I don't think people would buy that. Very bland civilization, very boring, very, you know, it's been a solid part of the Age of Empires 2 roster, for sure. Feels like I'm taking a bit of a shot here at the Saracens, and I am. But if you release the Saracens today, nobody would buy that. Nobody would buy that. So boring. So boring. Alright, shifting gears into a different debate right now. The community does not like that there are some civilizations that are not good on every map. Like, some civilizations are good on every map. You know, I'm talking Hindustanis, Italians, Portuguese, Romans, Chinese. Typically, we can find these civs played on a wide variety of maps. And thematically, that makes sense. I mean, especially these big empire-type civilizations like the Romans, like the Portuguese, like the Italians. like the Hindustanis, they have these scenarios in which they historically have thrived on land and water and have built lots of castles and fortifications and yeah, you can envision why they would be good on every kind of map. But players are not fond of the civilizations that are dominant on only one kind of map. I'm talking right at you, Bohemians. Bohemians get a lot of hate. They are the scourge of Arena. Everybody hates to see Bohemians on Arena. You wouldn't want to see Bengalis on Arena. But I just got to ask, would it be reasonable to think that the Bohemians would be good on a water map? Do the Bohemians have any water as part of their civilization? Do we think their kit of gunpowder should be good on Arabia? An early kind of aggression kind of map? No, of course not. I mean, thematically, the Bohemians should be an arena kind of civilization. Would we expect Huns to be good on arena? A primarily nomadic civilization. Probably without a very good late game. No, not. Any of these landlocked civilizations will not have a good navy. Yeah, I think some civilizations are just known for a particular kind of landscape, and it would be silly to pretend otherwise. In terms of game design as well, I think it is also fine to have both of these civilization types represented as kind of like the the stable civilizations that you might see in a lot of scenario, and then some niche kind of scenario civilizations. I think that is kind of a natural place to end up at. And now, granted, you don't want that to be too much of a distinction. You need variability. But I think where we are right now in terms of civilizations, in terms of broad picks and niche picks, I think it's 100% fine. Similar kind of theme, civilizations should have a balanced profile of success in early and late game. People don't like if a civilization is garbage in early game and great in late game, or the other way around. People don't like that. They think that is unbalanced and a sign of poor civilization design. And again, I think thematically this makes no sense. If you were the Huns or the Goths, you would be expected to be good in early game, just like the Romans. Now, granted, I think the Huns and the Goths have some very good late game compositions, but I don't think it's necessarily something that should be expected across the board. It's just not historically reasonable. I mean, these gunpowder civilizations like the Portuguese or the Italians or the Bohemians, you would expect them to be good in late game, and if they've been taken down by the Romans, that would be kind of weird. But yeah, in terms of civilization design, I'm not really buying that at all. Another one. Civilizations should not have dominant matchups, or there shouldn't be these very obvious Civ wins, right? Where, the win rate suggests that if you pick this Civ, you will always lose against this other Civ. And, there are resources out there. Spirit of the Lord did a video, a really good breakdown. I'm not going to pretend that I would do a breakdown as good as he would. But his video, I think, largely debunked this. In many instances, not all instances, you would expect a lot of Civs to be good against another, and that's just statistically not true in a lot of cases. I think one of the ones he discussed was the Goths and the Mayans. And that was not as bad as one might expect. So generally speaking, civilizations don't have crazy dominant matchups, and it's just not true. I mean, uh, it could be better. Like it always can be better, and especially with, you know, civilizations being overpowered on release, that could play a factor in terms of dominant matchups. You know, some of these civilizations have dominant matchups against everybody, right? Because they're just overpowered, generally speaking. But in terms of just really unbalanced matchups, there's not too many. I'll do a bit of research in the background, try to put some up on screen there. But it's just not that bad. It's really not that bad. So yeah, these are the primary debates going on in the community, and as you might have imagined, based on what I'm talking about, I think a lot of them don't have that much validity right now. And I think there's a bit of groupthink going on. You know, you hear a couple of pros say this, and pros are generally speaking, I think, on the same page as this. And you know, I will say this: the pro scene and the general player base, you know, are going to have very different experiences of the game. Some of these factors might be more acute in the pro scene than in the general population, and that's fair. Got nothing against that, but I do think it's funny, you know, one pro says something, and if they're beloved, if they're a beloved pro, then a lot of the Age of Empires 2 community will jump and be like, he's right. And they will do anything to go along with the general consensus from their buddy pros. To show the other side of the perspective, obviously, if you're a general viewer watching pro games, and this seems to be true, that the Civ design just isn't producing good pro matchups or anything like that. I disagree. I think the pro matchups have been very good. But if you are more into the pro scene than I am, then I cannot necessarily go against you there. All right. In summation, I know I'm giving some very unpopular opinions, but personally, I think it's okay to have more civs, to have freshness and diversity. I mean, I think that goes without saying. It's okay for civs to find their place in the game, for them to take a bit of time to find their place. I think it's okay for civs to be good and then fall back and then re-emerge again. I think that's fine. I think it's okay to have unique units as long as it's incorporated into balance. No problem there. It's okay to have civs that are good on every map. It's okay to have civs that are not good on every map. It's okay to have civs to have different win profiles at different stages of the game, and the civ matchup win rates are often not as bad as you think. These are my thoughts. They go counter to everything that has been discussed in the community right now, it seems, but I feel like I'm going a bit crazy here with some of these debates, so I had to make this video. I couldn't not make this video. I've just been dying inside hearing some of these debates. But that means I do have more very unpopular opinions. And if you hated this video, I'd be very surprised if you made it to this far. But if you hated this video, you're definitely going to hate my next video about Age of Empires 2 Heroes. So you can either watch that with great interest, or you can hate watch that. Either one, I don't mind. But if you have enjoyed this kind of debate, I'd be happy to hear anything in the comments, of course. Especially if you disagree with me. I'm more than open to indulging some of these debates, and I don't pretend to be someone who knows better than everybody else. But yeah, so I'll be happy to hear your comments. But if you'd like to hear some more of these unpopular opinions, please subscribe and perhaps watch this next video. All right, ciao, bye.